right, Field Yates is here. He does draft. He does fantasy. You know him. He's on every show at ESPN. What's going on, buddy?
Not too much, man. How are you? It's June. This is like my favorite part of the year, although my least favorite part of the NFL calendar. Vibes are high. Weather is finally good up here in the Northeast. We can't complain.
I can complain. I'll tell you what. We are of similar age.
Okay.
And we're getting to the point. I golfed yesterday.
Yeah.
I'm going to golf later in the week. I was doing some exercises earlier this morning. My back just hurt like hell.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I realized now is that if you just keep doing different exercises, the back pain will just go away. It's the turn it off, turn it back on method. Just keep going with your workout. The back, when you're our age, like you just pick up injuries no matter what. And if you just tell your body, I'm not injured, your body will be like, all right, I guess you're not injured. That's the trick to aging. I figured this out this morning.
Mind over matter. Thank you for that hint and that heads up right there. I'm going to be, I'll be aging in reverse now. Let's go.
Just keep going. Just be like, not today, buddy. Not today. I am excited about this NFL season. I'm getting June, because you think about it, Field. June is our last month without real deal football. Now, I don't know whether or not Rodgers reporting to Steelers minicamp happens or whatever. That's not real football. But training camp is real football. Training camp is pads are on. They're hitting the crap out of each other. There's actual things going on. There's position battles going on. It's crazy to me that we're in the last month without football. It's crazy.
Yeah, it is. And you know, there's probably some sickos amongst us that have been counting down the days. We are under 100. I'm not exactly sure. I know it's under 100.
You can start all the social media teams can start doing like we're Javon Curse days away, you know, like that. The 90, 89. Frank Wycheck. I don't know why I'm doing Titans. I don't know why I can't stop doing Titans.
Why not? I mean, because
Kevin
the Titans
Dyson. Here we go.
Some more pubs. What you're trying to say in a different way.
I've been saying. Real quick before we get into this, so this episode's going to go out today. Anthony Richardson hurt his shoulder. Yeah, the same shoulder he's hurt before. I just saw a tweet that said Daniel Jones in the driver's seat. I can't imagine a more depressing series of words if you're a Colts fan right now.
Yeah.
I think I'm getting to the point where I feel like the Colts failed Anthony Richardson, but I can't blame them for moving on. Does that make sense? Like, does that absolutely is it possible? And again, I said this before about guys, just because you're failed, I feel like this about Sam Darnold. Just because you're failed in situations doesn't mean the quarterback is blameless, right? And Richardson's whole thing was he needed to play a bunch of football. Yep. I don't think they should have benched him last year. They should have let him play. But if you're hurt and you keep getting hurt and you don't seize the opportunities, at some point I'm like, well, what do you want him to do?
Yeah, it's a weird spot right now for the Colts franchise too, because like what would be satisfying to Colts fans this season? Being terrible would not be satisfying because this team is not intending to be terrible. Like sometimes when you are playing the long game, you're sort of saying to yourself, it's okay that we're 4-13 because we have the shot to draft a quarterback who could change our franchise in just 1 year. But they also, like, to me, there's no championship equity here, right, for the Colts. So it feels like the Colts, especially given the division they play in, are probably destined for somewhere between 7 and 9 wins once again. And maybe Daniel Jones catches lightning in the bottle for a second time. But this team is in this weird state of probably landing in the middle, which in the NFL is one of the worst places to be. The Colts are in this category. I kind of feel like the Dolphins might be in this category again. As of this moment that you and I are chatting, they haven't made a Jalen Ramsey trade, but like Jalen Ramsey and a potential Jonnu Smith trade could only further signal that this team is not going to be an elite AFC team this year, which I think going into last year, Miami felt that way. Yeah. Anyways, I've turned this from a Colts to a Dolphins conversation.
But
the bottom line is
AFC check-in.
Being
what this episode is about, but I love it.
Yeah, nobody wants to be in the middle, right? In the NFL, it's very rare. The only team that could like this year get to like 7 to 9 wins. The category of teams would be like the Jaguars because they were so bad last year. The Patriots, right? The Titans making that leap this year. 7 to 9 wins sounds fun. For the Colts, it sounds like the recipe for change after the upcoming season.
Well, that's my thing is that I'm always, unless there's a plan in place for people to keep their job, I'll give you a great example. Brian Daboll and Joe Shane, there's a path to them saving their job, and it's Jackson Dart playing really well. And at the end of this season, we say, oh, okay, there's something here. We're not going to ruin Jackson Dart by giving him a new play caller next year. Let's let Brian Daboll play out the string. Shane hit. If you want to be charitable, Shane hit last year on his draft class. Yeah. Maybe he hit this year as well. We'll see. But like, there's a proof of concept there. With Indy, I don't know what it is. Because is it Daniel Jones putting abandon in the franchise saves everybody's job? That doesn't seem very smart.
It doesn't, and it would feel awfully lucky. And by the way, if he does, like let's just say the Colts find their way to 10 or 11 wins, and they end up either in the playoffs, winning the division, because by the way, the division is winnable, right? Houston, to me, the deserved favorites. But
watch Cam Ward.
Yeah, I'm excited about Cam. But anyways, the Colts, like let's just say Daniel Jones does take them to 10 plus wins this year. Let's call it 10 to 11, right? Not 14, but 10. Sure. Okay. Sure. What happens next? They probably sign him to a big deal. And then what happens?
Oh, right. Yeah. Right. Extensions.
Right. It's Daniel Jones reinvestment season.
It's like what happened the last time? If Sam Darnold didn't have JJ McCarthy behind him. Right. And they would have signed some huge deal with guaranteed money, would have changed the franchise.
Yep. And by the way, and so like we've seen it happen once with Dimes where he gets paid, whatever it was, 4 years, $180 million by the Giants, $90 million guaranteed, ended up being a massive sunk cost for the team by the time that they cut him in like week 16 of last year. So I'm not trying to say that winning 10 games is a terrible, awful thing. I just think that for the Colts, I think the most likely outcome is clearly the middle, and the unlikely but possible outcome is slightly above the middle, which could only lead them to making a reinvestment in Daniel Jones that I don't think is the greatest thing for the long-term health of the franchise. And candidly, I probably land too often, but more often than most, on the what's best for the long term of this team, right? You've got the contenders.
Yeah, because you cover the draft and you understand team building.
Right. Well, would you like one cup of tea where you go to a cup of coffee and like, hey, we had this one cool run, right? Like maybe it's the Jacksonville Jaguars a few years ago where like, they took Kansas City to the brink in the game in which Patrick Mahomes rolled his ankle at least in the playoffs. Like that was cool, but like very few games outside of that stretch of games during that season inspire a lot of long-term confidence. So the bottom line is this: Indianapolis in a very, very tough spot going into this year.
Okay, a couple things. Number one, I just had the realization that Daniel Jones is this generation's Sam Bradford, where he's just going to get like four more $10 million deals after this. Might be from a different team. Might be, hey, we love him in the locker room with the Colts. And what's amazing about the quarterback market is that Daniel Jones making 14, and then Baker Mayfield's making 33, and there's only one player, Justin Fields, making between Daniel Jones and Baker Mayfield. And that's amazing to me. But Daniel Jones is the cutoff of kind of the third tier
quarterback Mendoza line. Yeah.
Right. And so the Justin Fields, and that actually like kind of tracks, right? It kind of tracks. But also Baker Mayfield's better than one notch above Justin Fields.
My takeaway from that is the Baker Mayfield contract is a freaking steal for Tampa.
Absolutely. But Daniel Jones is going to keep making 14 or $10 million for like the next 5 years. And I'm not a big, like everything's getting worse guy. I'm not a doomer like that. But Sam Bradford was so much better than Daniel Jones. We can't be having Daniel Jones kicking around for 5 more years, making seven figures.
Don't you go pocket watching. Come
8 figures. Now. 8 figures. Excuse me. 8 figures. Yeah. 8 figures. Excuse me. Yeah. Okay. I'm not pocket watching. I'm just saying, at some point, like I always wonder, like Sam Bradford's like a stick golfer, and like you never hear from him, and like he just, from what I understand, just hangs out playing the best courses in America with all his money. He just disappeared one day, like he didn't want to play anymore. He had that like cup of coffee with the Cardinals, where I think he made $10 million more. Like I always wonder, like when they're like, all right, I'm good, I'm done, cash me out. Like with those guys, it's very funny.
Yeah, well, Sam too, by the way, like shout out to him for stringing it along as long as he did, because as you recall, he was the last of the old rookie pay scale, right? Yes. He got $72 million in his rookie contract, which is obviously 22, right? Yeah, and so we with inflation and the salary cap rising, we have reached a different. I think Cam Ward's like 4 years, something like $50 million. He's going to be fine if he is flaming out of the league in 2 years. I don't believe that's going to happen, but $50 million can make you whole when you're 22 years old. But Sam was like really ahead of the curve on that one.
That's great stuff. All right, let's do what we're actually doing, which is a Leap Show. We'll do this. We do this every year, and it's 3 guys, whether coaches or team or assistant or mascot or whatever you want to do. Someone who's going to take the leap, or some people who are going to take the leap this year and go from, it can be anything. It can be bad to good, good to great, great to Super Bowl contender. We've had that in the past. Elite to MVP candidate. We've had that in the past. So I brought on Field because he covers the league. He covers the draft. He understands fantasy. He does the fantasy podcast at ESPN. He breaks news on the insider stuff. So he knows everything. So no one's better equipped to do the leap stuff. I will give the floor to you, Field Yates, your number one leap.
So first of all, I decided to take this. You sent me a briefer version of this, but you sent me a general sentiment of where this was heading. So, and I took it as the mascot being the most prominent thing. So I want to start with Blue, Colts mascot, and who I really think he's played at an MVP level in prior seasons.
Much better than anybody else in that franchise.
Did you know what? Quick aside, I don't know if this is still the case. There was a time where he was the most followed NFL character. What would you describe him as on TikTok?
I'm looking at on TikTok.
On TikTok, yeah. Like
I'm looking this up.
Like
I have TikTok.
Millions. Yeah, I'm impressed.
I have TikTok. Are we? What's the age cutoff? Like, are we too old?
No, we're too old. We're too old. I have opened up TikTok like once in the past 3 months.
I obsessively watch it because my algorithm is golf,
cool golf shots. Yep.
Cool golf shots.
Yep.
College football, hype videos, mostly focused on like the 2010, 2015 era. Like a lot of Johnny Manziel.
A lot of Big East football, right?
Yeah, tons of Big East football. And then old NFL film stuff. And then like randomly, like there's a bunch of movies on there. They're just really popular on TikTok, but nowhere else.
Yep.
Like that movie, like History of Violence, like stuff like that. Like for some reason, that's in my TikTok all the time. So my algorithm is cooking, but I very rarely post. Anyway, I'm gonna find the Colts mascot.
Yeah, so he's big on TikTok. Give me the actual number. In the meantime, I'll filibuster.
8.6 million?
I wasn't lying, was I? I know. Did I just blow your mind?
His bio is your mom's favorite mascot. What?
I got to confirm that. Can we confirm that with Mrs. Clark? So, his big thing is the pies, right?
Yeah.
I don't want to detract you or totally sideshow your show, but sidetrack your show, excuse me. Think about TikTok. Like there was a time when I was a little more active on TikTok where the guy that I was most latched onto, like the person whose TikTok account I visited, not by the algorithm, but by choice the most, was a guy who just really cleanly chopped wood. And like he could chop anything, right? Like you could put a bowling ball in front of him and he would find a way to neatly chop it up. I digress. My actual answer, because I'm sure people are like, can you just get to the picks?
Yeah.
Caleb Williams. And I think it's the low-hanging fruit. It's the most obvious one. So let's talk about something that's not Bill Belichick's personal life for a second here as it pertains to Bill Belichick, because he used to hammer this all the time. The biggest leap for a player is often between his first and second year. It's not always, but it's logical, right? Bill would go on this little rant in the way that only Bill Belichick can, where he'd talk about, rookie season, you're coming in, you're just trying to figure out where the cafeteria is, what's the name of the equipment guy, you gotta find a house, you gotta, in the case of some of these guys, own a car for the first time, whatever. All the stuff in life. Right now, it's muscle memory. Caleb Williams probably knows everybody in the building. There are people that are still getting to know Caleb as opposed to the other way around, because he is more veteran than some of the people that have been hired to coach Caleb Williams this year, right? But on top of the fact
Doyle, offensive coordinator, born in 1996 or something.
Yeah, he's 28 years old. Incredible. So Caleb, just because of the fact that he's making that year 1 to year 2 leap, should be in good shape. But then on top of that, it's the most obvious potential breakthrough situation, right? He goes from infrastructure that was poor last year, right? You have multiple different offensive play callers during the season last year, a bad relationship, it seemed like from the outside between the quarterback and at least his first play caller, at least maybe not bad, but at least not thriving relationship, right?
In the sense that the family hired a lawyer to see if he could play for somebody else.
All right, yeah. So you get my point here, right? Ben Johnson, I would say inarguably a top, you name it, 1, 3, 5 at worst play caller in the league right now, who's super creative. And I'll say this is an aside, and maybe this is the kind of stuff that you think about when the games are not being played, April, May, June. Ben Johnson has had such incredible command of the media since he got there. You may recall when he first started doing those press conferences as Detroit's offensive coordinator, a little bit kind of reserved, quiet. Yeah. So impressive now. So anyways, I think that's a contagious trait that's going to translate.
The way to spin, and I don't know if this was messaged from up top or whatever, but the way he spun the Caleb Williams didn't want to play for the Bears thing as this is an opportunity. This is a challenge. I'm excited about that.
Right.
I thought that was so cool. And you could get really defensive about it and say, well, not on my watch. And he didn't. He basically said, I'm up to the challenge on this stuff, but made it empathetic with Caleb, empathetic with the Bears franchise, and empathetic with the Bears fans.
Yeah, they didn't hide from it, right? That's news to me. I didn't know that he said that, right? They addressed it head on. Anyways, this is a bit of a tangent. Where I should have said is this. Caleb's going from year 1 to year 2. Caleb is super talented. Caleb has a decidedly better offensive line. He has an excellent play caller on his hands. His wide receiver room didn't change that much, other than the fact that the 9th overall pick in the draft last year, Rome Odunze, should be an every down player. All those things contribute to, I think, a big leap forward for Caleb.
Agree. I keep saying this, I'll say it again. Most unblocked pressures, most unblocked sacks in the next gen stats era. He holds on to the ball too long. Hopefully Ben Johnson can coach it out of him when you consider that. And so a couple of months ago, I was looking at some of those numbers and I was thinking, okay, that's just who he is. That's who he was at USC. That's who he was his rookie year. But when I look at Jared Goff's operation and how efficient he was when he threw under 2.5 seconds, I'm like, you know what? Instead of letting Caleb be Caleb, why not just have a bunch of easy answers where it's like bang, 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 like tight ends open. We have 2 of them now. Slot receiver open, bang, bang, bang. And that's what I want to see from Ben early, is to establish those easy answers to Caleb where he's not always just trying to problem solve by running back and forth. There's some of that. And again, it's what we've talked about with Brian Callahan and Cam Ward, where you can do the 6-second miracle play, but let's do that twice per game.
Correct. And by the way, like sometimes the miracle play is like, it's never by design, right? It's only when like we need it, right? 3rd and gotta have it, end of the game, and it's, whatever, 4th and forever. But yes, Caleb, 2 things. I remember this was a saying that was once pasted up in a wall of one of my like elementary high school teachers' classrooms. It was, be quick, but don't hurry, right? Caleb, you talked about like the unblocked pressures, like be quick, get the ball out on time. Don't hurry, though, where you're too quick and the receiver's not there or you're playing under a lack of control. Second thing here would be that, yes, like layups early are important. Singles early are important for Caleb Williams. That will breed the kind of confidence that leads to, while there weren't maybe as many as we thought there'd be as a rookie, some of the ridiculous throws that Caleb made, which if you go back and watch the tape from this past year, I bet you find quite a few of them, maybe more than you might recall.
All right, I'm going to piggyback off that. He was not my number 1, but I just want to keep this conversation going. Mine is Drake Maye.
Yeah, similar category, right?
Yeah, similar category. One of the worst offensive lines in football. And every time, by the way, I think I called the Bears the worst offensive line in football on TV a couple weeks ago. And I had Patriots fans being like, what are you talking about? There was a moment where I was during the 1 p.m. games last year, I was doing radio with Justin Pugh.
Yeah, I remember that.
And so I'd watch the games and we'd talk about it. And there was a moment where a Patriots left tackle, I think, blew a block so badly that I jumped out of my seat, which shouldn't happen, by the way, for an offensive lineman. That should be reserved for a big fumble or a wide receiver making a great play.
Correct.
The offensive line was so
play.
bad that I had to mention. And Justin Pugh watching was like, oh my God, that was awful. A couple maybe 20 minutes later, Jeff Howard, somebody tweets they've made a change at tackle. And I said, well, of course they did. And then I look at it. It was the other tackle they benched. That's where the Patriots offensive line was. The guy who made the notable blown block, still out there, still doing fine. That's how bad it was. I couldn't even isolate which awful tackle was going to get benched, okay?
Yeah, it was bad.
That's all you know. So I'm looking at Drake Maye, 2nd most scramble yards in all of football last year. That tracks. He had one of the best deep balls ever tracked in college. We didn't get to see that last year because we're getting the crap knocked out of him. All of a sudden, you've got credibility at wide receiver. You've got we'll see what happens with Stephon Diggs. I thought that they nailed the draft.
Coordinator change?
Yep, coordinator change. Josh McDaniels knows what to do. He's at least raises the floor. Bruce Feldman was on here talking about how great the Patriots draft was a couple weeks ago, and so I think he said it was his favorite draft. And so I'm just looking at this and saying there's no way there's not a leap into star track. Now, I'm not saying he's going to be the 9th best quarterback this year. But what I'm saying is that there's going to be a season this year where we go, okay, we know this is going to work. Yeah,
and obviously you got to prove it on the field. But there were some times last year where I talked to people within that organization, and they'd say I'm not telling you this because I want you to go out there and clamor it publicly because we're 2-7. So it's probably going to fall on deaf ears. But there's so much stuff that this guy is doing that isn't seen that's so ridiculously impressive for 21 or 22-year-old, whatever he was last year as a rookie. So there's the intangibles bucket that I think is excellent for Maye. The last thing that I'll say on him is this number was inflated a tiny bit in week 17, I think it was, because I think he barely, remember there was a Joe Milton game, of course, famously in week 18, but with like one game effectively left in Drake Maye's season, Drake Maye had 0 rushing yards on designed quarterback runs. He had one such attempt. I think it was a quarterback sneak that was stuffed. But that's a whole part of his game that could be totally unlocked, right? I mean,
and Drake they can run the tush push.
Yeah, run the tush push for at least one more season. And even if they don't have to rely on him as extensively as some of these other quarterbacks have. It seems like part of their calculus last year was protecting him. But like, you don't think in every once in a while, like quarterback draw would be effective with a guy who's 6'4", 225 pounds, and probably runs a 4.6 40? That to me would be something that if I'm Josh McDaniels, I'd be willing to tap into.
Here's what I like. Every pick in the first 4 rounds for 3 rounds was to support the quarterback.
Totally.
Will Campbell, Travion Henderson, Kyle Williams, wide receiver, then Jared Wilson.
Yep.
Every single player supports the quarterback. That's a team. And I said this about the Bears, but that's a team realizing that they're in a crisis. That's a team saying, we got to fix this. And it was funny because with the Bears, like, people are like, well, they did the bare minimum. Yeah, well, the Bears have not done the bare minimum many times. And like, if they had rolled this over with the Patriots regime, I'm not sure that they would have said, hey, we're in crisis right now. We got to fix this or our young quarterback's going to fail. I think this is Vrabel and Ryden Calvin saying, like, our only goal this year is to make the quarterback's life easier, which last year was not the case.
Yeah, I think the Bears deserve credit for this offseason, like two-pronged, right? Ben Johnson by himself and those 2 huge offensive line investments, 3 offensive line investments, right? 2 guards and a center. I said earlier, the Bears wide receiver room hasn't really changed. But if you include Colston Lovin as a receiver, like the 10th overall pick in the draft, also being somebody that can help Caleb Williams, to me, worthwhile investment so far for Chicago.
Agree. All right. Who's your number 2?
Number 2, Packers pass rush. This is an interesting one. So you go back and look at the Packers pass rush numbers from last year. Like if you just go to the ESPN.com sack team total page, I think they were like 8th, 9th, somewhere in the top 10, right? The raw number of sacks is good. Let's make it our second Big East football reference.
There we go.
Of the
let's get to 3.
The show.
Let's get to 3. I'm going to get you to 3.
Do. I am married to a Boston College graduate, a lovely one at that. I believe when she first got to Boston College, it might have been, no, it was ACC by then. But the bottom line is I do recall the days of watching Big East football growing up in Boston. But Jeff Hafley,
I went to a Miami BC game. Not a ton of energy there in Chestnut Hill.
Yeah, there was that one year where BC was awesome, and then Ed Reed ripped their hearts out. It was like a
Ryan
17
Poles
to 12.
On that team.
That's right. Yep. Speaking of Big East legends, so the Packers hired Jeff Hafley last offseason, and if you watch BC football under Jeff Hafley, you know that like pressure was a staple of what he did. They schemed pressure well last year in Green Bay. They did a good job with Hafley finding ways to design pressure and confuse opposing quarterbacks. I think pressure is great no matter what. I think it's greater when it happens from 4 guys, right? Because when you can rush with 4 and get home, it means you got 7 players playing coverage as opposed to 6 or 5, right? The Packers didn't make major investments in the pass rush in the NFL draft. They drafted Baron Sorrell in the 4th round from Texas, and then Colin Oliver, who was at Oklahoma State but missed a lot of this past season in the 5th round. That's it. Hey, you know what? 1 out of 2 ain't bad. You should know like the first round picks, and then we can figure out the rest of the guys later. But I still think there's a chance that the play better adjustment works out for Green Bay this year, which is always one of my favorite hacks to go to around this time of the year. It's like sometimes you look at it and you're like, do they have a terrible pass rush? No, like Rashawn Gary makes $25 million a year. Like they used the 13th overall pick on Lucas Van Ness, who hasn't necessarily merited or shown that he was deserving of that pick. But like, it's not like they're relying upon guys with 0 capacity. The pass rush needs to be better, rushing just 4. They have a better secondary right now because they added Nate Hobbs from the Raiders in free agency. If, and as of the time of this conversation, it's not a guarantee, Jair Alexander is A, back with the Packers, and B, halfway back to where he was previously, the secondary should be better. That takes a bit of the pressure off the pass rush. The pass rush can be better. That takes a bit off of the secondary. To me, the pass rush being a bit more timely and effective with just 4 rushers will go a long way in this team, who was really good across the board. If you look at most of the defensive metrics last year, be a potentially dominant defense.
I love that. And I got to be honest with you.
You thought I was going back to blue.
No. I thought that. So Frank Ragnow retires.
Yeah.
Shuffling along the offensive line there.
Yep.
In Detroit. The Vikings have a new quarterback. So
Yep.
I'm in wait and see mode there. The Lions are replacing both coordinators. And I have the utmost faith in Dan Campbell.
Yeah.
To figure out, succession and all that stuff. But you look a couple years ago with the Eagles, Nick Sirianni, who as of this taping is a Super Bowl winning coach.
Yeah.
He went 0 for 2. And it's not because he's a bad coach or how he's a bad GM or Jeffrey Lurie's bad owner. Sometimes you just get unlucky, right?
Yeah,
and so then next year they get 2 new guys and then surprise they win the Super Bowl.
Right.
So all I'm saying is that you are making a bet if you're projecting out as far as coordinators go. And so anyway, all this to say, I think all 3 of the teams I just mentioned are going to be good. By the way, I think the Bears are going to be much improved. I think they're going to be in the mix to win the division. But I'm starting to see the Packers winning that division.
I mean, I certainly could see it. I mean, what's the glaring question mark on this team going into the season? Like roster personnel wise,
Yeah.
Where are you like, it's all great, but like that corner room really scares me. Like, I just don't think there is one for Green Bay on paper right now.
The receiver at some point, the receiver.
They need somebody to
just
sort
have
of emerge.
Bodies there.
Yeah, they do.
They probably need Matthew Golden to.
But they had a really good roster going into last year. I get that. Some of this is going to be
them to make the Super Bowl last year.
You're a big NBA fan, right? Obviously, everybody knows that. You love your Orlando Magic.
I love,
but
rebranded, baby.
Dude, those new unis are sick.
Yes,
but
they are.
In the Western Conference, every year, it's like we do these, we eulogize these teams when the season is over, and it's like, and again, I'm not saying like it's better to lose in the Western Conference Finals than make the Western Conference Finals, but I listen to a ton of NBA podcasts, and some of the tenor following the Wolves is like, man, like really, like when you think about it, like they got a lot of things they got to figure out if they have any chance to get over the top. Yeah. And I'm like, okay, that's true, right? But like they also made the Western Conference Finals and ran into like a potential, like a team that up to this point is historically great. Like some of the teams are just going to fall because like they play in a chemically imbalanced league where all the good teams are in the West. Someone's going to be 4th in the NFC North this year. I think if you took that team and put them in the NFC South, we'd be talking about that team without knowing which one it is as like they might challenge the Bucs to win the division.
I agree. A couple things. Number one is that you mentioned like the problems, like the X-rays. I actually, one of the reasons I'm hyping up the Bucs right now, and they have hopefully the secondary is a little better or whatever, and they'll be healthier. But I was looking at a PFF article where they were like, "What's every team's biggest problem right now?" Yeah. And literally, the Bucs one was who's going to be the number 3 wide receiver, and I'm like, oh, like that's a pretty good deal because other teams
is it the 19th pick in the draft or a guy like Jalen McMillan who fielded very capably last year, right?
Or is it like Chris Godwin? It's like you don't know one maybe it's like some whatever. The other thing is very quickly, I was actually listening. My phone was dying yesterday as I was driving into the city, and so I had to turn it off, that whole deal. So I just listened to talk radio. And WFN had a great topic that I've never thought about before. Are the Knicks automatically championship contenders because they made the conference finals? That was the debate. Right. So like, if you get that far, were you a championship contender by default, or did you have no chance? Well, no, here was what they brought up. So Tiki Barber was on the show. Yeah. And they said the Vikings got their ass kicked in the NFC Championship against Tiki's Giants. Yeah. Were they a Super Bowl contender that year?
Yes. I mean, maybe I have been accused of being like a little bit too much life is good from time to time. I'm an optimistic guy by nature, but yes.
I mean, you started this with like a life is good update. You were just like, it's great. And I was like, I can complain about my back problems.
Yeah. I think the Knicks were NBA championship contenders, right? There's a whole butterfly effect of every game, but like if they win game 1, is it possible they lose a series? Of course it's possible. Indiana was, I thought, clearly the better team. But it's also possible they win game 1 and they get the game at home in game 2 and you go to Indiana. There's a lot of pressure on the Pacers. I don't know. This is sports. This is why they're fun and beautiful.
I just want to say Tiki said that Sean Payton before that game said we're going to throw for 300 yards in the first half because their secondary is terrible, and that basically the only thing that the Vikings were good at that year. And unfortunately, or fortunately, we don't have Nate Tice coming on the show. He was on the last week. But I will mention the slander on that Vikings team via Sean Payton, according to Tiki Barber, was that they just got early leads with Randy Moss, and then teams would just give up, and they had a really bad secondary. So Sean Payton knew they'd be able to torch the Vikings.
Sorry, Payton, Vikings fans. Never been afraid to exude some confidence, right?
Yeah, I'd say. All right, I want to do my number 2 really quickly. I talked about this team a bunch. I think the Denver Broncos are going to make the leap into one of the best teams in the NFL. And I'm looking at this roster. And you want to talk about holes. I mean, they might have the most talent this side of the Philadelphia Eagles on defense. I'm looking at the fact that they could have had, you could have made the case for two of their guys to be Defensive Player of the Year candidates. Yeah, yep. They had one of them.
3, actually, I'd argue.
3, yeah.
I'd argue Zach Allen. I'm assuming you're saying Nick Benito and Matt Surtain. But Surtain, excuse me. Well, but I'd throw Zach Allen in there.
Throw Zach Allen in. So we have 3 DPOY candidates. And Sean Payton, the aforementioned Sean Payton, who really thought the 2000 Vikings stunk, is in the mix there. And Bo Nix. So, again, you want to go to your problems, right? What are your problems? The offensive line is really good, okay? They probably need another skill guy to pop. Fine.
Yep.
But if the issue is we need Sean Payton to raise the floor a little bit more on the quarterback position, I'll take that deal. It's like Inglourious Bastards. Wouldn't you take that deal? Yeah, I'll take that deal. Like, if that's the issue, I think you're looking at a great season.
So recency bias is a thing in every walk of life, in my opinion, right? I see it all the time in fantasy football. Everybody is saying Jamar Chase absolutely, unequivocally has to be the number 1 pick in every draft this year, even though, like, it's possible he's the best player in fantasy. It's also possible that Bijan Robinson or Justin Jefferson or Jahmyr Gibbs. So I'm more open than some are on that conversation. But the reason I bring up recency bias is the last time we saw the Chiefs, they were getting curb stomped by the Eagles in the Super Bowl, to the point that people are saying, yeah, but is this the time in which are there sharks in the water right now smelling blood in one of the most centrally located and as far away from the ocean cities in our entire country, Kansas City? My instinct is there are teams around the NFL that sort of feel like, hey, we can start to get these guys. Like, they got to reconfigure their roster to get back to the top. The AFC is more wide open than it has been when this team has played in 5 out of the last 6 Super Bowls. We'll see if that happens. It's a bit of to me, it's always dicey to count a champ out too soon. That being said, I do think there are some who believe the AFC West is finally open for the first time in almost a decade, because they have won 9 straight AFC West division titles at the Chiefs. Absurd.
This whole thing is going right into one of those Patrick Mahomes, like, you playing on the screen while he works out kind of thing. Just get ready. You might as well just direct this directly to Patrick, because he's going to be listening.
I know, of course.
No, I wouldn't go. I think it's going to be like, both teams win 13, 14 games. It's like one of those deals. Like, I don't think the Chiefs are going to fall off. I don't think that the Chiefs
are going to go 15-1 to begin the season again this year, right? I think it's going to be a harder row to hoe this year than it was last year, where they just found ways to win at the end of the season.
I also think, and again, maybe I'm arguing against my own point, but like, Los Angeles is going to be better. Yeah. The Chargers. And the Raiders have credibility now. Like, the Raiders,
they have a quarterback, and Pete Carroll.
And so, I mean, maybe it's hard for both of the teams to win the amount of games we're talking about, but you never know. But I just think that the Broncos are going to be able to bully teams in a way around the AFC, where my hunch is that right now we look at Buffalo, Baltimore, Cincinnati kind of in the mix, but the potential to be on that plane with Kansas City. Yep. I think at the end of this year, we're going to have Denver on that plane.
I can buy that.
At least with wherever Cincinnati is now, as far as just that we understand what that can look like.
Yeah, one of my picks was almost anybody not named Trey Hendrickson on defense can make the leap for Cincinnati. That's not my third one, though. My third one is, I'm going to start with trivia. How many 30-yard catches do you think Marvin Harrison Jr. had last year?
I'm going to guess 0.
He had 1.
Whoa, okay.
Week 2 against the Rams. Remember last year against the Bills, a game in which the Cardinals scored like 35 points in week 1 and lost. It was like, wow, this offense was electric. And Marvin Harrison Jr., I think, had 1 or 0 catches.
And then he was like the slowest player in Next Gen Stats history or something. Remember that?
Yes, there were some separation score issues, right? So he ends up with 1 30-yard catch last season. I don't know that Marvin Harrison Jr. will ever be as explosive as his draft counterpart, Malik Neighbors or Travis Hunter drafted this year, etc. But I do think he's good enough to have more than 1 30-yard catch in a season. Also, I think we need to revisit what happened last year at the top of the draft with a relative high frequency because it's important. So the Cardinals, as we all recall, in 2024 had the 4th pick. Number 1, Chicago. Number 2, Commanders. Number 3, New England, right? Quarterback. But who was the most popular team that we said, hey, if someone's going to move back, it's going to be this team? It was Arizona, right? It was, do you go from 4 to 11 and give Minnesota 4 so they can trade up for JJ McCarthy or whoever it is, Bo Nix, whatever, and you, meaning the Cardinals, get 11. Remember the Vikings had 2 first-round picks last year. You get 11, 25, whatever the original pick was, extra capital in future years. No, they've resisted all overtures, which were real, because they had a player at number 4 that they felt so confident was A, worth it, and B, such a priority for them to get at that juncture last year. It was Marvin Harrison Jr. It all looked like the stars had aligned. Other than Trey McBride, there was no threat to take up targets in that Arizona offense last year. And yet he had 1 30-plus yard catch. I believe he had 2 100-yard games. And down the stretch, just like a non-factor for a guy who, all right, maybe the evaluation of him being the next Larry Fitzgerald or Calvin Johnson will prove incorrect. But this guy has so much pedigree. He's so talented that they don't have a choice but for him to be far more involved this year. And I think he gets there. I'm not saying he's going to be, first team all pro this year, but I think Marvin Harrison Jr. looks much more like the kind of guy that is worth holding off the huge draft overtures for and making the 4th overall pick.
I agree. I'm buying Cardinal stock this year. I don't think they're going to have that late season fade. I think that, Nate Tice, again, the aforementioned Nate Tice, talking about how good the defensive schemes were. Mike McDaniel was on the show talking about how amazing Gannon and Nick Rails scheme up Budda Baker. I mean, Budda Baker is one of the most underrated players in football. Really underrated. And I always tell people, just go on NFL Plus, just Google. There's a stat called Run Stats, filtered by run stops. Watch Budda Baker's run stops where he comes up into the box and just pops a guy. It's really amazing.
Missile, right? Yeah, it's crazy.
Heat-seeking missile. Yeah. All right, quickly, my last one, Dave Canales into Coach of the Year conversation. Coach of the Year conversation. Yeah. So I'm looking at this and I'm saying, it's like a horror movie where people like notice like the killers in the background of all these photos. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, okay, Geno Smith, career resurrected. Oh, look who's there. Look who's there on Wikipedia. Dave Canales is there. Baker Mayfield, career resurrected. Oh, look at I make out. Oh, look, it's Dave Canales there. Oh, Bryce Young, biggest resurrection last year of a quarterback. Oh my goodness. Look who's the head coach. It's Dave Canales. And there's a lot. I remember Bill Parcells said something one time that made me laugh. He was like sarcastic. He was like, Pat Riley seems to be in the vicinity wherever winning goes on. And with Dave Canales, it's like whenever a quarterback's getting better, Dave Canales seems to be in town.
Right.
And I just think that the way they're building, and I don't think, again, this is me couching it in the sense that I think you're looking at a maybe double digits, maybe a wild card team. But I don't think they're gonna. I mean, they can. First of all, they can win the division. I don't think the division is that good. Yeah. But I don't think they're gonna be on the Eagles tier anytime soon. But I just feel like the leap in Carolina, it's sooner rather than later.
Yeah, and one of the unfortunate parts about being bad is that you're bad during the season. One of the fortunate parts is that you tend to have a lot of draft capital, which Carolina finally is back on track on the capital front, right? And then 2, you have a lot of money, right? If you maintain your books well, and because you don't have that many players you're trying to extend, right? When you're bad, you don't have good players. So Carolina was able to dip its toe heavily in free agency, losing Derek Brown, not to get too far into defensive tackle discourse, but that was a massive blow for them last season. That happened in the first week of the season, right? They lose their best defensive player along with J.C. Horn on the first Sunday of the year. So a lot of signs pointing up for Carolina. Dave Canales also seems like, as a football coach, he has a very high emotional IQ, which I think is becoming a more and more important thing for young quarterbacks than it maybe was even a decade ago. And the reason why I say that, and bear with me here, is we're in the NIL era, right? I mean, these guys arrived to the NFL as in their own brains already established franchise quarterbacks, right? I don't totally trust the NIL reports of how much these guys have made or are making during their final college season, but I'm sure that these young quarterbacks now that are going to end up going in the first round are making, $3, $4, $5 million a year. And Bryce, and he is by all accounts super mature, but the bottom line is it's not like Bryce can't handle the heat. It's more just like you're going to find more young quarterbacks who maybe need to be lifted up a little bit than a decade ago, where it was like you just kind of you were forged through like the difficulties, right? That was the expected evolution of quarterbacks, as opposed to now, where if you're not Jaden Daniels or what we saw from Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert, it's like, whoa, what's wrong with this guy, right? Like, you mean you can't change the franchise in week one of being a starting quarterback.
Field Yates, thanks, buddy.
Thank you, sir.
You got anything to plug? Where can we read you, listen to you, the whole deal?
I did get hair plugs, so I'll take that.
There you go.
No hair plugs here. This is just all natural.
There you go.
I feel like are you going product list right now?
I am.
Minimal product. Yeah.
It's June.
It's June. Yeah. I haven't cut my hair in 6 months, or almost 6 months. So we're letting it flow. You can't see it as much when I'm sitting in front of my.
You were peaking during draft season.
There we go.
I saw it. I saw it on TV. You were peaking.
It's funny. Like we were at an event a couple of nights ago. I was with Shefty, and he posted a picture, and someone said, "Tell Field to cut his hair." And I saw Shefty reply, "There's only one person who can tell Field to cut his hair, and it's Field's wife, and that is the accurate answer. And she is a fan. So if she's a fan, don't at me.
I am with
Go at her
wife.
instead.
Anytime my mustache gets to be recognizable as a mustache, it gets vetoed pretty heavily here.
But listen, she's the boss, right?
She's the boss.
Pulitzer Prize winning boss.
Pulitzer Prize winning boss. Yeah, I haven't
Yeah.
yet won a Pulitzer for this show or any of the tweets I've sent, but that's what next year's for.
A lot of ball game left.
Hey,
man.
this is a leap show. What better way to end it than me making the leap into Pulitzer Prize winning podcaster? See you, buddy.
Go. See ya.